Hello, Black men in the DMV. If you are between the ages of 15 to 54, you can help improve healthcare services for Black men. The Strength and Stressor study at George Washington University looks at how stress from things like discrimination, unemployment, police harassment, housing instability, and coping strategies impact Black men's mental and physical health. Become a part of this study, and you'll be compensated between $200 to $250 for your time. For more information, text 202-596-2743, email strengthstudiesdc@gmail.com, or you can see if you're eligible by using the link in our bio/Linktree.
What are you doing, beloved?
Attention, attention, my black brothers. What I want y'all to do right now is take out the do-rag, the silky, tie it down. I want to see the waves glistening. If you got nappy hair, pick it. Don't let nobody discourage you.
Ayalew.
Black boy.
Your skin looks great.
Really?
Yeah, and you know what? I needed to make sure I said it to you while we were recording because, you know, nothing like receiving a compliment in front of everyone. But it looks so smooth and brown and soft. It's just great.
My skin?
Yeah.
Thank you. It looks good, right? I'm just playing. No. So I shaved and I was nervous about it, right? I was nervous that with me shaving, I was going to turn into a Mia Thornton face. I was going to come and just give like crater face and things like that. So I was very nervous, but here we are. I actually hate my face like this, but we're growing into it, girly. I know I told you.
Loved it.
Thank you. I'm getting used to, as you see, the beard is already like starting to come back. So we're going to have to see where it goes. But thank you. I appreciate
22, like 21 years old. Like you just look like a young college student right now. It's crazy how much our facial hair, like cutting a Black man's facial hair will literally take him down so many years. Like that's wild. Because we were just already like youthful and look anyway. So it's just amazing that when we cut our facial hair, we just look like children.
Yeah, because I always talk about it as like men don't often manipulate their face or their skin a lot. So like it's a lot of like oils and natural like things that are part of it. So like men predominantly have really nice skin, like nice like eyebrows and things like that if they just like keep it up or like just like actually like are aware. Like some men are just like really good at it. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't got bumps anymore. But yeah, but sister, how are you? Welcome back. What's going on?
Not much. I'm in recovery. I was watching my mental health decline, and it was getting pretty bad. I was getting really neurotic. And so like in the middle of a neuroses, I was just like, oh, I have to like do something different before I completely lose it. I've made some different decisions. I'm not going to be drinking for a while. Because I find that whenever I'm in this space, what I use alcohol for is different than when I'm not. Other times I'm using alcohol because it's like, oh yeah, this is a convenient time. Let me have a little fun, drink a little bit, let loose a little bit. If my mental health is not in a good space, then what I'm using alcohol for is escapism. So until I feel like I am healthy again, I'm just not going to be doing alcohol at all.
I respect that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think for me, I still need to work on grappling with the mind, like drinking. Not saying I drink a lot, but I'm talking about like I drink to feel comfortable and feel good, and just to like vibe out and things like that. But sometimes, it just a drink isn't always needed. Now I am that is me with other libations. I don't smoke. That's nothing. I'm like, all right, there y'all girls go. Y'all can have that. It's more the merrier for y'all. But I definitely and I'm glad you're always great at being aware of like your mental health and like specifically, being bipolar, being aware of like the symptoms or just things that you can project and being able to just self-regulate or self-control and be like, you know what, let me do this. I just want to shout out to you for always just being so like intentional and trying to work through your mental health as best as you can, because I know it can be like a struggle sometimes. Also, I love the background. I think y'all been like making some like improvements and stuff like that to the house.
No, I think you can just see more of it.
Okay, because I love the like very much giving me like a Tiny Desk vibe.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, this is Eli's like book and music collection. Well, this side is books, and then there's music over there. My books are in my room, but I mean, he's a writer and a reader, so he has significantly more than I do.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, forgot to almost do this. What is up, everybody? It is your boy, Lord devery.
And I'm Derwin King.
And welcome back to another episode of That Black Boy Joy, where we create a space where black boys can be themselves and
so much more.
We are back with you all, and you are hearing our lovely voices right now. However, we do have a guest in the building with us in our interview section, the meat and potato section, who I'm super excited that you all will get to meet. He is one of my coworkers. His name goes by Solo. It is going to give you a lot of historical conversations about Ethiopia, his upbringing, and things like that. So we are super excited to have him in the building with us. But before we get into the interview, of course, we always do our Black Boy Joy Spotlights, our check-in with each other, and our hot topics and stuff. So we're going to, of course, dive all on to that good stuff. But, Derwin, what are we doing for the Black Boy Joy Spotlight? First of all, I am sweating. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, girl. So I just moved the camera up so people couldn't see mine anymore because I'm so embarrassed about it. If I could find a way to edit it so y'all couldn't see how much I was sweating just now, it's this ring light. I am
it is mine too.
Quite literally mortified, and yeah,
baby. FYI, y'all.
Yeah,
we have our ring lights over here burning us up.
I put this shirt on. I'm sick.
And you are still, sis, but I'm over here like I looked at myself. I said, "Ooh,
you're not gonna catch me."
Right? You see, I moved the camera up. But girl, what is the spotlight giving us?
Today's spotlight goes out to Eric Hart Jr., 22-year-old NYU Tisch alum. He currently has a Doritos and Solid Black Changemakers campaign, which celebrates members of the Black community that are using innovation and determination to drive culture, change the status quo, and give back. He is a two-time Gordon Park Scholar in a 2022 Forbes 30 Under 30 Art and Style Select. And in 2020, he was named one of Men's Health magazine's 20-year-old Mavericks Changing America. You actually should go and check out his website, Eric.
I'm doing it right now.
So it's erichartjr.com. So erichartjr.com. And you can see Simone on that. Yeah, Spike Lee. I think Lotto was up there, right?
Yeah,
she's like
Lotto,
one of the first pictures
Lotto.
you see when you get up there. These photos are stunning. Stunning. Look at Simone. Oh my God,
know.
She's really breathtaking.
I'm like,
Lotto.
give it to mama. Oh, Eric is fine too.
Oh, yes, he is.
I love the nails.
Just very engaging work, like really fun to look at, and clearly like a trusted photographer. Really celebrating Blackness and queerness in really interesting and engaging ways. So definitely wanted to give him a shout out because it is well deserved. He is cute. I love actively looking at people's websites when we're recording.
Me too. I'm over here like, listen. I'm over here like, because it's like we be talking about him, but then I'm also like, I'm like, Jesus, let me look at this. Let me get that look. Yeah, very fine.
We're not gassing, baby. These people are fine.
Okay. But no, shout out to Eric. Like I love a good photographer. I love a photographer so much. There's a guy, I don't want to say his name.
I know that we've done this. So I was thinking when I was like looking, I was like, I know we've done photographers before, but there are so many Black male photographers who are just super duper talented. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely love celebrating them, and I'm going to keep celebrating them. Okay.
Okay. Shout out to them. But let's get into these rants, honey, girl. Let's get into girls.
Okay. So the first one is actually really interesting to me. I don't know if you saw, but like there was a woman on Twitter, Kimberly Nicole Foster. Mm-hmm. So she's a YouTuber and a cultural commentator. She is currently suing some Nicki Minaj fans, also known as the Barbs, because they have been mercilessly attacking her on social media, but not leaving it at that. They have been actually issuing threats of like physical, like bodily harm, murdering her family, raping her and her family, kidnapping
her family.
Yeah. They were like, it won't just no normal, like, oh, bitch, fuck you. Your mama should have swallowed you. Like, because that's what they told me back in 2013. It was like, oh, yeah, baby, we're going to actually like harm you and your entire family. And then they were like finding out where she lives and shit. They're okay. These people who are doing these things are absolutely insane. They're really crazy. And what has been really disappointing for me is just watching there be like no accountability from Nikki herself, just like telling them to like, you know, hey, bring it on down. Because that was something that I really had appreciated about Beyonce when the Beehive was like at the pinnacle of being I shouldn't say
crazy. Crazy.
When people were coming down super hard on Beehive the way that they are on Barb's now, I'm not saying it was undeserved. I'm just saying this is what was happening. Beyonce had like actually told them motherfuckers to calm down. She was like, hey, relax.
Simmer down now, bitches.
I don't need you to do any of this, right? So I think a good number of the Beehive, not all of them, but a good number of them figured out, hey, it's time to bring it on down. If we could just bring it on down.
Bring it
the Barbs
on
don't give
down.
a fuck, and Nikki don't give a fuck either, because she really be egging them on. So I know Nikki is in the process of like talking to her legal team about people like suing for defamation from what I've seen. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty certain she's collecting information to hold people accountable for saying things that may or may not be true about her. Mm-hmm. And then now this woman, Kimberly Nicole Foster, who's pretty present on Twitter, is also doing the same. If you read, so her tweet that started this, by the way, said, Nikki is so clearly a horrible person. Negativity sticks to her like glue. Right? I don't know if we've ever seen this before. That was the tweet that had gotten the response.
Speaking of Nikki, Cardi B they won that case against Cardi.
Yeah, she was being sued because she had encouraged her fans to go fight someone, or she hired someone. She hired somebody to whoop those strippers' asses
bottle girls that were attempting to assumingly be bothering Offset, and they actually won their case against her. She looked really cute at the court, though.
Yeah, but I didn't feel really good about her, boasting about that. Like, why was the response to that taking pictures of her looking like cunty in the fucking courtroom? I was like, girl, this ain't no better. If everyone could just bring it down a notch, that would be delightful.
Bring it on down.
Why we're allowing celebrity culture to just, bring out such ugliness. And, it is true, as petty as I think it is for people to be like, these people aren't paying your bills, or, why are you in rich people's business? I do want to say that there's, a clear disparity in how people view the world and reality if they think that they have any benefit in doing this for people who, frankly, aren't actually being affected by people's, online opinions of them. Their money's not changing, right? It's one thing for you to commit a crime and be held accountable for it in the court of law, and then, people stop supporting you and now you don't have any money. But someone saying that she's a horrible person on Twitter is not affecting her even a little bit. It just isn't. It isn't. Even if this lady has all these followers, right? Kimberly Nicole Foster's followers will never amount to what Nikki has, because Nikki is a pop star. She has fans across the world. People listen to it. She's a musical artist. She's just going to garner more followers than someone a cultural commentator. So this lady's comments were inconsequential to Nikki, period. And the fact that it warranted all of these people coming in and making actual threats to her is completely ridiculous and absurd. And scary.
Yeah, Nikki's fans, too, they be going too hard, they be doing too much sometimes. The Barbs, I'll be like, calm down. Girl, she's cute. Y'all, stop trying to beat everything up. Stop trying to beat it up because y'all gonna get caught up. Right now, y'all getting sued.
Yeah, what if you end up in jail? Because you said you're going to murder someone's family or kidnap them, or you found where they lived and showed up to their home. She's reporting this stuff to the FBI, baby. This ain't, the county jail.
The FBI
what I fear is that it's going to lead to some new legislation in how we comport ourselves online. And then I feel like, and I mean, like, I don't have any basis for this yet because I haven't seen any change in legislation yet. But like, if we end up getting censored even more because we have to now protect people in a new way from online crazies, from stuff like celebrities, that's a really awful turn for our civilization to take. That's just me.
We've taken the celebrity shit like ridiculously, like ridiculously. Like, it's y'all stick to just being like, just stick to just standing them. Like, just don't get all. Just stick to that.
I prefer them to sit up and argue about Billboard charts for the rest of their lives than to just be jumping into people's mentions, threatening family members.
Please, like, girl, it's not giving that. Like, why are y'all mad?
I just wanted to mention this briefly because this is white people's business. This is white people's business. But did you see Adam Levine and the ladies' DMs going, fuck?
Girl, I was like, y'all are too known to be just in people's DMs like y'all are regular bitches. Like, I just don't care. Like, cover your tracks up, bitch.
What is going on at home that you got to jump into several, like, you were jumping into several DMs in an excruciatingly horny way. Like, relax. Like, you've never seen a woman before. And now getting aired out. And then all these women are coming forward.
It just take one bitch to set your ass on fire.
And they're making a point to point out that, like, the way that this is being discussed on multiple platforms, like, even I just said it, like, coming forward, like, as if this man, like, raped them or something. Like, it's being discussed as if it's sexual assault and not a personal infidelity between Adam Levine and his wife and the mother of his children, right? Cheating on someone is not a criminal offense, and I don't appreciate us discussing it as if it is, right? Like, it isn't my business that Adam Levine is cheating on his wife.
Yeah, it's really not, but, you know, the girls love to be in this. But people love it. The thing about it is, like, people love it. The people eat it up. I just also watched Honk for Jesus, and, you know, that's about, you know, the pastor that, you know, all that shit about, you know, sexual allegations and all that stuff like that. And everybody was.
But that's a different story.
It is.
That's a different story because what is important, and I saw that movie, I loved it. What is important about that film is talking about, number one, the role the church plays in abuse. Number two, a grown man seeking sexual pleasure in specifically queer young black boys who don't have the social power he has, and him utilizing that social power to get sexual favors from them. That's a completely different dynamic than a man hopping in a beautiful woman's DM on Instagram and saying, fuck, you have a nice body, right? Because at that point, like, sure, he has a social status, but these are just like, these women are like, hey, what's up, you know? And we didn't know about it until the women got on social media and were like, hey, look at this man was named his kids after me, versus like a whole church scandal. Like, this is a man in a church and he was bringing these people in under the guise of safety and I'm going to provide for you, right?
Yeah.
And then manipulating them into sex, manipulating someone into sex, and then just being a celebrity happening in DMs. Just
being different. Obviously saying that you want sex is different.
Exactly. Exactly.
He's obviously is, because it made me think of also Jeffrey Dahmer. Also, girls, I know the girls, you know, it's the number one watched series on Netflix right now.
Is it really?
It is in a lot of countries. Sad. So let's. I know we just talked about the straights, and also the basketball player Nia Long's man also was caught in some scandal as well.
Bad. They cheated.
The straights is over there cheating, but we're not surprised. Nia Long, get out of there! Hurry up, let's get it out. But Jeffrey Dahmer, that conversation ties into that, you know, honk for Jesus thing as well. So like that manipulation, that, you know, luring queer black men specifically, because 10 out of 17 of his murder victims, Jeffrey Dahmer's, were black men.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So it's crazy. Very, very much crazy. And shout out to just like people, the woman, you know, people just trying to bring awareness to it and shit like that. And I think that people are interested in the, I don't know why, because people do be fangirling serial killers, like lusting over these niggas, which is really weird.
But, you know,
But they did that with Charles Manson. Like, people will be in the, like, jails, like, you know, for, like, serial, like, what's that, Ted Bundy? Like, bitches be over there, like, really fucking with these murder victims. Like, bitch, they will kill you in a heartbeat.
Is it possible that people have unhealthy relationships with, I mean, well, there's no healthy relationship with an abuser, but even just, like, symbolically have unhealthy relationships with, like, abusers in this society?
I think, so I love I love the learning about the minds of how serial killers work. I think people are so fascinated and attracted to their, like, like how they could be so casual in public but so crazy internally or, like, behind closed doors. Like, I think people are, like, really attracted to that, like, that two what is it called? Like those personalities that you just never expect, and specifically with white men, right? The very attractive ones that you would not know was killers, but that's how they were able to kill you, dumbasses, was because they were attractive and they knew that.
I have a different opinion about that because I'm almost always looking at people like, I'm about to figure you out first. Like, I'm gathering all the information I can. So I don't see that whole, but they seem so... No, there's usually a sign there. I don't know what it is that people are seeing. I don't know. American society just, like, really glorifies sociopathy in a really odd way. And, like, I feel like y'all... I shouldn't say y'all.
Girl, because first of all, girl, when people hooking up with people, they are very much avoiding the warning signs. All right? So, yes, girl, I get what you're saying, but, like, girl, sometimes people be avoiding those warning signs just for a quick what's-the-name, and then that quick what's-the-name is your life.
I can't relate because I'm assuming that there are warning signs. I'm not being like,
true.
I am generally skeptical of almost every human being I ever meet. Like, I am paying attention to who you are and what you're doing. And I'm not saying that that's a healthy relationship to have with humanity, but I am saying that I'm looking for that shit. So I'm not fascinated by how people can show up in, like, you know, public as one person and then be different at home, because I know that people exist like that, number one. I've seen what that looks like, and I don't think it's impressive, and I think it's something we need to all be aware of. And I don't know, I don't share the interest in looking at stuff like that. That doesn't mean I won't watch the Jeffrey Dahmer, like, special. I may or may not. But I need something more than, like, I think it's interesting. I mean, if that's your answer, I'm not trying to attack you for that.
Wait, what was my answer? I don't even know what my answer was.
Well, that, like, it's interesting to see people have double lives, like how they can, and, like, how their mind works.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't think that's it for everyone. There has to be something deeper, because if you keep consuming it over and over again, I think that America fetishizes people who operate in this way. Granted, you're saying that the special is number one internationally. I don't know, maybe.
And in the States, too, like it is. I think the acting is pretty spot on. Niecy Nash, shout out to her as well. I think it's also, like, and there's been plenty of shows about Jeffrey Dahmer that's been out. I think this one is from the perspective of the victims as well. So that's the thing about it, is it's from the perspective of the victims, and I think it also goes into this conversation of police and queer men, and how there were multiple warning signs and there were multiple attempts to, you know, white privilege as well. Like, Jeffrey was able to continue this because the police were like, oh, he's fine. These are his boyfriends, or, you know, things like that. There have been numerous. Because it was us. And there was also minorities, like other minorities as well, that he, like, you know, took the life of. And there was multiple things. So I think it also goes into this conversation of, you know, that white privilege and that power and how we are still silent at hand. But I think people also are fascinated. I think for me, I'm also interested in the warning signs of growing up to the makings of a killer. You know, watching that and you seeing how they grew up, and there are clear trajectories that this nigga's going to be a killer.
That's different.
When he grows up.
That's something. Like, so this is going from childhood and up?
Yeah. It goes from childhood and up. So there's, like, flashbacks of, like, his first murder, his parents' relationship, his first interaction with, like, necrophilia and, like, all of those stuff. So, like, you start to see that this nigga was crazy, and he was actually sanely crazy, which is, like, he can pass all these tests. And I think that's what people are interested in. I think what scientists are like, there has to be, like, a switch in somebody's mind to go, like, and to be that cannibalistic and that like so cold. But like the person is very sane, and it's interesting to see that.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
So the thing about it is like they're very coherent in the space. They know it's not like I blacked out and came back and the person was dead. You know, it wasn't like I was in a space of like rage or fury or things of that nature. It was, I know my intentions were to kill you. My intentions were to eat your heart. My intentions were to chop your body up. You were intentionally saying there was like you were coherent the whole time. It wasn't.
Yeah,
like
I wouldn't use the word sane for that though. I think like that. My question would be like, how are we defining sanity? Like we can't define sanity by consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
We would need to question what we think sociopathy and like psychopathy are, right? Because being a psychopath isn't being unaware of what you're doing. You are aware, you get pleasure out of it. Like you're actually enjoying hurting, like harming other people. And if that's not insanity, I don't really know what is.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know they diagnosed him sane because they tried to say that he was like insane, right? They were trying to say that he was not coherent, he was not all those things. But the court in the study was like, no, he was very, and I'm only using sane because that was what they used. So
no, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, definitely push back. Yeah, definitely push back and things like that. But he was diagnosed. He was diagnosed sane. Like there was no, because they try to find triggers. They try to say like it's this, it's that. Oh, he's bipolar, or oh, he's this or that. But like, no, you can still be a serial killer without all of these other internal disabilities.
I'm sure a lot of serial killers don't have those.
I think I'm always fascinated on what makes them tick. What makes them start that process of committing these murders and these killings and things like that. So for anybody interested or not, don't check out Jeffrey Dahmer's, the Netflix series. Or if you are interested in the mindset and the, victims, please, check it out and things like that. But we don't want to keep talking about it. But we are going to go into a quick break before we get into the meat and potatoes of our show with Solo. So we will be right back. And what is up, everybody? We are back. And like we said, we have our guest in the building with us today. Solo, how are you doing?
I'm good. Glad it's the end of the workday. I'm ready for the weekend to hit.
Yeah, so for you all who do not know, Solo is an immigrant, an Ethiopian immigrant, not just an immigrant, just immigrant, now residing in the DMV and also my coworker. So I was like, why not have him come on the show and chat with us? Also in our office, it's not that many of us. We recently have got an increase of men in the space, but shout out to Black women for taking over. But it was I think 3 of us when I first started with you.
I was the only one before, because you started like I think a month after me or something like that.
Yeah,
so I was the only one. The other man had left before. So I was just like, "What up, ladies? How y'all doing?" They're amazing though. So it's been amazing working with them.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of conversations about, Black masculinity and things like that. And specifically with you being an Ethiopian immigrant, what masculine looks like in another country and just what your experiences have been like with that. So I was like, why not, have you come onto the show, talk about what that looks like for you and things like that. So first of all, thank you so much for taking us up on that offer.
Yes, thank you.
Y'all look so good, by the way. I'm sorry. I just want to say, y'all look great.
That's so kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. But first, we always ask our guests this, and I know everybody has probably different thoughts and perceptions of it, so that's how we ask it. But what does Black Boy Joy mean to you?
Black Boy Joy for me means loving each other with courage and just support and honesty. That's what Black Boy Joy means to me.
Yes, we need that. Listen, we need that in all diasporas and all different spaces. So we also have that. Also, just to let you all know, Solo is off the market. So please do not be harassing us. He does have a girlfriend, a loving girlfriend. So please just do not be in our messages bothering him. He is not with the winning team. He is with the ladies.
My 1 year anniversary was like last week too. So thank you.
Oh, congratulations. Also, y'all can be in our DMs. Just don't go in his.
Right. Okay. Just letting y'all know our DMs are still open. But we will kindly not respond if y'all are harassing Solo. All right. So I just wanted to put that in the air and things like that before we get started. But thank you for answering that.
Debbie mentioned that you are an Ethiopian immigrant. For those of us who are not great at geography, what part of Africa is Ethiopia in?
Yeah, so Ethiopia is in East Africa. It's in what's called the Horn of Africa. So if you ever look at actually you can see right here, this little part right there, that's Ethiopia. It's not that little. It's 3 times the size. It's 3 Texases would be what that is. If that can give you reference points. But yeah, East Africa.
Thank you
for that, Derwin, because I wouldn't have known that.
No, honestly, you would be surprised. We just don't learn African geography in the same way that we do like European and Asian. So, I mean, like, there's probably 4 or 5 countries in Africa that I can tell you I know for a fact where they are. Senegal is one of them. But I otherwise wouldn't have been able to tell you exactly where Ethiopia was. I actually thought it was further north than east. So thank you very much, Solo.
No worries. And it's growing up too, because I grew up in the American education system. If I wasn't Ethiopian, if I wasn't raised in an African household, I would probably have not known either, because you're right, they never talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But since you did just give us a little bit about, your academic history growing up, can you tell our listeners a little bit about you before we get started with the interview?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Solomon Ayalew. That's how you pronounce my name. So I was born in Ethiopia, in Gondar, Ethiopia, which is the northern part. It was the capital before our current capital of Addis Ababa. And from there, my family, we had to escape conflict at the time. And so my mother, as brilliant as she is, she was able to pretty much smuggle us out of the country, all 3, my dad, myself, and my sister. Just, again, another example of Black women being amazing. And she was able to figure it out. And then my dad had work and had got his MBA in Belgium. So I was in Belgium for a couple of years. We ended up leaving Belgium because it was way too white. But then we ended up going to Ohio, which was even just as white. So,
I was like,
that's how it goes. So I'm raised in Ohio, for the most part, Columbus, Ohio. I got my bachelor's degree in sociology at the Ohio State University. And then I came to the DMV and finished my master's in public administration at American University. Now,
nice. Impressive. What a rich history.
Right. So how long had you grew up in Ethiopia before you all began to move?
So we left when I was about 4 years old. And when we got to Belgium, we only stayed there for about 2 years, and the rest was in Ohio. Now, the thing is, though, as you could probably know, for a lot of immigrant households, when you are in your house, you are in back home, essentially. Like, you speak the language, you eat the food, you learn the culture, family comes over. And then when you leave to go to school and all that stuff is when you start to experience American culture. And so a lot of us carry that kind of duality with us all the time, anywhere that we go.
Wow. So, it was basically like you were back in Ethiopia. You was like, okay, when you leave this house, you are an American immigrant, you are immigrant. But when you walk in this house, we are all up in here Ethiopian through and through, which is pretty amazing. And also, I found out, I don't know if you told me this, but the Maryland, Silver Spring specifically has the largest Ethiopian population outside of Ethiopia.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. But
I'm so certain of that. I just had that observation really early on in my time there. I just had never interacted with so many people from one country before. And I remember thinking, I wonder if this is a thing, if people specifically migrate to Silver Spring. It was always I would work in DC. I had a couple retail experiences and leasing experience in DC. And every time that I met an Ethiopian person, I asked them where they lived. And a lot of them would say Silver Spring if they weren't in DC itself. But that's such an interesting concept. Do you know why? Why that particular area?
Well, so originally the Ethiopian community came and four different waves. In the 70s, when the king and the empire fell, in the late, well, really that's in the 60s, but in the late 70s, when the socialist government fell, the communist government, and then again in the 90s, which is when I came. Throughout those waves, a lot of people came to DC. It was DC and New York were the two big spots. And it makes sense. It's like, if you're going to move to any country, move to the capital. Like, that's probably the safest, probably the most jobs, probably the most opportunities. And so they did. And, you know, when one goes, you bring your family, you bring your other family. And DC became the largest concentration of Ethiopians outside of Ethiopia. But, you know, gentrification, the cost of living here has pushed a lot to Silver Spring and Fairfax and Falls Church area.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. I was like, little did I know all that stuff. So what was the process for you and your family to migrate? First of all, how often do you go back home to Ethiopia? How often do you travel?
Well, so me and my family are asylum seekers because we had to escape persecution. And so we couldn't go back until 2018. I didn't see family. I didn't see my grandparents. I didn't see my aunties, uncles for 21 years. And it was a very difficult thing, especially for my parents, as you can imagine, just having to leave a whole world that they built. And yeah, the process was hard. We came to America seeing it as like a land of opportunity, and to some extent it is, but then you quickly realize there are a lot of barriers, and then you have to learn different concepts, what it means to be Black, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a Black man in Ohio of all places. So that was a very, very difficult learning process for all of us, and in our own unique ways as a family.
Well, and after 2018, did you frequently go back once you were like cleared? What was that? Why 2018? Was it like a law that said you had to wait a certain amount of time, or was it just were you all? Because I'm not sure. Yeah, I wasn't familiar.
Yeah, in 2018, the government that we were persecuted by was ousted and replaced by the current government. There's still a lot of conflict around that situation, but essentially we were able to finally go back because the new government that once it came in got rid of the list of people that weren't essentially allowed to be in that country. And for me, I actually went before that change was enacted because I was told, I was like, listen, you have to basically when you go, I told my parents, I'm not going back. I'm not going to finish my master's until I go back home. You know, that was my main thing. I was like, y'all not, I'm sorry. You're not going to, I'm gonna hold this degree hostage until I see my family. And my parents were scared. They were terrified. They were, because the changes hadn't been enacted yet. I could have been held there and never been left. I've never been allowed to come back. But you know, I made it back, fortunately. And
what drew you to make that decision? What was compelling you so much at that time? To make such a grandstand?
Yeah. I think at that time I had seen my master's program as like this next step in my life. And I hadn't had a chance to really look back, and actually connect back with my roots. Actually, that's what this shirt in Swahili, this means mazizi, it means roots. Okay. And so I told my parents, I'm like, I want to get my master's. I want to pursue my degree, and they want me to, obviously. I was like, I can't go forward without looking back. I need to see my family. I talk to them every once in a while. And so that's what eventually made me put my foot down, was like, I'm not going to graduate until you let me go back home. And we figured out a pathway back home, fortunately.
There's so much to admire about a person. And you know what? I'm actually specifically going to say a Black man who feels so tied to and passionate about his family. I think because there are often reasons that pull us from our families geographically, if we haven't already been so, like, emotionally. So feeling such an allegiance and loyalty to your family, to want them to be a part of your life in a physical way before your life changes substantially, is really honorable.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, it was a hard choice. And actually on the way out, there was this situation where I was, giving my passport and everything. And so naming conventions in Ethiopia is different than it is here. Our last names are our father's first names. So that's the reason why we do that, is because it helps us to track our lineage past, we have to know 7 generations above. And so for me, like that was a big thing when we came to America. My dad didn't know that there was a difference, and he didn't know what a middle name was. He just thought it was first, second, third. So he just said Solomon Salashi Ayalew. Ayalew is my grandpa. That actually got me into some trouble with some police, because they would see my last name and they would be like, why is your last name different than your dad's last name? And like with a gun on me, I had to explain to him, like, we have different naming conventions. Like, that's just how that works, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it was just, it was actually a little part where when I went to the people, when I was back home, I can't use my dad's last name for scary political reasons. And so I was using my grandpa's last name. And when they saw my middle name was his, they like held me up for like 30 minutes. And they were like, what, like, who is this person, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I'm nobody. I just need to get home. I start classes next week. So unfortunately, I was able to make it through and made it back. So yeah.
Do you remember anything about that process when your mother was bringing you to Belgium?
Yeah, I remember the stress. I remember, so at the time, my brother had died. And so we were dealing with the loss in the family. And then at the same time, trying to get out for political reasons. So it was just very high stress, and having to, once we got to Belgium, for example, I've never seen anything like that in my life. My family hadn't seen anything besides my dad, who had traveled before. And it was scary and confusing. The chocolate was good, so I got to give him that. It's really good. I ain't gonna lie. But it was intense. And honestly, if we had stayed there a bit longer, I think we would have actually settled in quicker than if we had came to America, because America has so many little things here and there that's like really like little like paperwork at this point and assignments at this point, and you got to check in here and blah, blah, blah. It gets so complicated immigrating to America.
So what was that? What now? Talking about specifically like masculinity in Ethiopia and in your culture and things like that. What is your experiences with how masculinity is presented? What males' roles are typically in the family and things like that, and what you've experienced with that?
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities in terms of like, men are to be leaders of the household, the patriarch of the household, all that stuff. But what's interesting is that in Ethiopia, the amount of expression that men are allowed to, I guess, perform, the way they're allowed to perform their masculinity is a bit broader than it is here. And so what I mean by that is that men, like physical affection between men is very common. Men hold hands, men hug each other, men are very comfortable, like just like even laying up on a couch watching something. It's just not considered that like much of a problem. They'll go take a dip in the lake and be naked, and there's like no issues around that. And not only that, but even like in our language, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of American people, when they speak, there's the kind of the deeper the voice, the more manly, essentially. For Ethiopian men, we can go up and down. We can get really high, we can get really low, and there's no questioning or like policing of like tone, even in that instance. And it's very like
wild.
It's very wild, and it was something that was really difficult to like kind of wrap my head around, because even for my dad, when we had family come to visit, he immediately, this is his friend he hasn't seen in almost 15 years, immediately went to go grab his hand and said, let's walk, let's talk, and blah, 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 like the way he did when he was in college and whatever. But then I saw he remembered he was in America, and he just let go of his hand. He was like, oh, yeah, we can't do that here. And we got to like, he had to do that and move past that. And that's when I started realizing why I think the expression of masculinity is broader back home, because there's this erasure of queerness back home. And that erasure of queerness that is very intentional and very long lasting, has created this like, honestly, like it's like kind of collective understanding, like, oh, it's men can do whatever because that can't possibly exist here. That can't possibly happen here. That's a Western thing. That's a Western idea. And so for us, like, it doesn't mean anything. So it's like, there's still layers to that. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, okay. Now I see why. I used to think, I was like, being Ethiopian, man, like we get to, you know, talk how we talk, hug each other up. Like it's so progressive, but it's always important to like understand why things are progressive, because then when you see the why, you realize that it might not actually be that progressive, essentially.
That is so interesting, because of course it does then have its like hiding out in the open like benefit, but then you're still hiding, and that is just not really good for anyone mentally. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have expected that either. Like, I didn't think it was that erasure made it more comfortable for men to emote more because they omitted that mindset that queerness was not a thing. However, what was it like when you all started to encounter queerness in Ethiopia? Then, like, wait, there's this erasure of it, so we should be able to be free. But now this conversation of queerness in African countries is starting to be something that's coming over from the Western. You know, how was that?
Yeah, so it's really like, it's something that I've been trying to understand more as well, because so essentially I think it's important to like get some context, historical context. So Ethiopia is a very religious country. It's 40 to 50% Christian, 50% Muslim, and a little bit of Jewish people here and there. And both of those are conservative like views, versions of those faiths. And so there's definitely elements of that seeping in. And there was always like kind of, because queer rights movements were for the most part seen in the West, it almost became, if you were anti-West, then you adopted anti-queer behaviors and ideas. And people kind of like conflated the two. So it was a very complicated thing, because even when you look at like Human Rights Watch, for example, the organization, the countries that they like pull up and they highlight as being the ones that have the most human rights abuses against queer folk are often always Black and brown countries, unless you're Saudi Arabia and you have alignments with the West, and so we're not going to pay attention to you. Or you're Cuba, and even though you've provided trans healthcare, we're not going to give you your props because you're not aligned with the West. So there's like this kind of weaponization of tolerance that's occurred across the world from a Western perspective, specifically on queerness. And it's created this like toxic environment now in Ethiopia. Prior to, I mean, there was always issues, let's be clear. But prior to 2000, really the past like 5 or 6 years, there weren't that many anti-queer laws, because it was kind of this understanding of there are none, even though there are plenty. Like there are many, and I have friends, I have family, people that I cherish and support, and so that was always such a hard thing to like keep in my mind. I was like, oh, okay, that's basically, I'll have an uncle or auntie who will just try to act like this person doesn't exist, but they do exist, but they just don't want to recognize the part of them that they don't want to exist, essentially. That's what's essentially happened. And then they like put religious connotations on it, cultural connotations on it, political stuff too, as well. And it just creates this like really messed up environment. Now in Ethiopia, like 2 men can't rent a hotel room together unless they prove their relationship to each other, familial relationship to each other. Like, and that's how serious it had progressed, because of over the past 5 or 6 years, there was so much anti-West sentiment. And it was like people are using that anti-West sentiment to fuel homophobia and fuel attacks against queer communities within Ethiopia. So it's very complicated. How recent would you say that all is? So 2008 saw a big spike, and 2015, and then now again in 2020. And in each time, it was like as anti-West sentiment would come up, that would then also rise. So there's the thing that's like important is like decoupling queer identities from like European and Western. World, because it's like there's queer people everywhere, and it's like anywhere you go, there's queer folk. And so to like try to scapegoat, and that's the thing too, we have a lot of ethnic tensions in Ethiopia. The one thing that Ethiopian Christians, Muslims, Protestants, different tribal groups all have developed anti-sentiments towards is queer folk, and now there's a scapegoating that's occurring, and so people are being targeted, and it's very scary right now, and trying to provide support for people back home has become really difficult as well. Sorry to make it heavy, y'all.
No, you're fine.
So I'm so thankful that you have such a rich historical context of Ethiopia, because I have so many questions about why any of this has happened. Okay, so are there ways that people have been able to maintain masculinity norms from Ethiopia in the States? Have you seen people who still continue to show those same expressions as they share community here in the States?
Few. Especially it depends on when you come. When you come at this like at a younger age, you pretty much like my age. When you come in, you learn masculinity like through even adolescence. When you experience that here, you develop so many understandings of masculinity, what that looks like. But for those that come later on in life, it's a survival thing. Once they realize certain behaviors and certain like presentations of themselves are bad, then are considered bad in this country, then you immediately start getting rid of them and you flatten. I mean, a lot of immigrants, especially up until recently, when being African became cool, assimilation was the move. Like, we need to get as close to everyone else as possible in this country.
And that's so wild, because for that to then change at home, now what it means to be like African, well, specifically because we're talking about Ethiopia, what it means to be Ethiopian would mean that would be different, would it not?
Yeah, it's I can never go back home and be seen as 100% Ethiopian. I can't exist in America and be seen as 100% American. Not even like Black American and African American. There's like differences there too. It's a thing that like we just, you learn to deal with. Especially when I went back home and I was just noticing that people would talk to me different than they would talk to my cousins who were there. And they were just like, yeah, man, they know you're American. And I'm like, what you mean? It's like, I haven't said anything. It's like, yeah, we don't need to hear you talk. See how you walk, like even your skin, how it looks, like we could tell, like everything lets us know, like, you're not from here, essentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've seen that happen too. Sorry, go. I've just seen that as an observation. I've seen that. I have a friend that is from Turks and Caicos, and here they immediately are like, without him speaking or without like, there was like your mannerisms. I think we were out one night, and they were like, your mannerisms, you do not look like you're from the States. And I was like, dang, like I observed that, and I feel like that happens because he's been here, I think 14 years in the States, and then when he goes back, he's like that. So I just wanted that nuance of like looking at someone. And even with us, I think the way you look around at things when you're like, they know you're a tourist or who are not tourists is very interesting, that observation. But then it's crazy because you're Ethiopian and they're like, you're not Ethiopian. You're Ethiopian
not
American.
Really from here.
But it's like I was born.
Exactly. It was crazy. And the thing is, like, a lot of people back home and in other countries spend a lot more time watching Americans than Americans watch them. So we learn very early on how Americans act. And how they're perceived to act through the media, which is why it's important to change what media representation of Americans like abroad, especially Black Americans, and like other minority groups, because it's crazy how so much of the Black experience in this country has been told through white voices and white writers and so on and so forth. And even though the Black people on the continent are just like, no, they see it through that lens before they see it through the lens of people that look like them. So,
yeah,
I wanted to ask what based on the way you've described masculinity historically in Ethiopia, what did that mean for the relationship between men and women there?
Yeah. So actually, there was a court case not too long ago, I think the 90s, where it was the first time they started to like crack down on sexual assault against women. Basically, and the reason I bring that up is because it was such a watershed moment for women and women's movements in Ethiopia. And essentially, Ethiopia has a much more, especially when you get into rural areas, much more stricter gender roles that need to be played. And part of that is for survival reasons. Like, listen, we don't have running water available to us all the time in the way that we do in this country, especially in the rural areas. Or we don't have this. I'm going to go out here because I'm bigger and I'm stronger, you know, all that that comes with that. And you need to stay here and because you can do that and I can't. So there's this like performing a gender roles that come out of a necessity. But at the same time, it's definitely when cities, when that's not the case, they still like, it's like that. There's not enough being done to deconstruct them the way that there is here. Because it's so tied to, I mean, Ethiopia is a 2,000-year-old country. Things have been developed for many years at this point. So it's hard to like uproot them.
Yeah. Because I was curious about that, how that relationship is with men and women in those spaces, because historically, you know, I think that's also comes from where gender norms and gender roles came from, was means of survival in the beginning. Was like, okay, men are genetically built to be stronger than women. Women were built to conceive children or have children, so you know, or just take care of like things around because they're softer. So I get that, but then it's like when we start to get into like the future and we start to realize like, 'cause I think there was it World War II when women started to go into like factories and all that because men were like at war.
That one picture,
yes, like I think those things started. Did you ever feel like there was a shift in those dynamics in Ethiopia growing up, or do you feel like it was still always maintained regardless of how things were being more progressive around the world? Or was it just like we don't care about what's happening around the world?
So, yes, the Ethiopians do not care about what's happening around the world in the sense that we have a 13-month calendar. We have a different calendar system. So over there, our New Year's is celebrated on September 11th because they didn't want to change the January 1st calendar that everyone else did. So Ethiopians are very no, we do our own thing all the time. Which
is fine. Like, I definitely get that. Like, that respecting the culture that you have is fine. I was thinking about more so in the progressive, like the gender roles. Not, you know, the culture is the culture. Keep that. But sorry.
So, no, you're good. But with the gender roles, like, so I think it's important to also, like, to understand, like, you know, the Ethiopia had an empire for a long time. And in there were many queens. There were about 5 different queens that are very well known, and there were a bunch peppered throughout. So there was this very like deep like history of essentially like women being in leadership positions and fighting for protecting the country, and especially when they were fighting against the Italians during World War II, and women were a big part of that fight. There were times when the Italians came and women would we have this spice called devery, and they would put it in their pockets, and they would lure Italian men, you know, just as, you know, whatever way they could, and then they would throw it in their face, and then they would kill that man, essentially. And that was like how war was being played out, and women were like a big part of fighting that. And that has been one of the saving graces within Ethiopia in terms of progressive like ideas about womanhood in there, in the sense that there was always this like, be like Queen Taitu, being like Queen Sheba, be like this. So there was these models and these images that still uphold like the strength of women, but there's still a very clear like, okay, you know,
boundary.
Yeah, there's a boundary. Like there's a boundary. I would say compared to America, there's some ways that women are, like for example, we have a free maternity leave for 12 months that's provided by the government. We have most of the like healthcare needs of women can be protected by the government through proper healthcare systems, and that's because like there's this understanding of like if we value women as mothers, then we should help them to be mothers. Essentially, like that's like kind of just a simple way to connect that. So
it's like logic, but it's like no,
right.
It's like, why not? Which is very. you still have maintained the history and culture of Ethiopia. How was that? Was that taught down to you, or was that something that you learned on your own? Like, how did you keep that history enriched in yourself as haven't been there as long? You haven't been there in so long.
I think so. My parents were part of this generation of Ethiopia that were very patriotic and very believed in the country, and they passed that on to us even when we were here. And there's also this kind of defiant, we aren't going to lose our culture just because we had to leave. So we will make sure our kids uphold it. In my household growing up. Mm-hmm. And so we were, taught the language, which is behind me. I keep that up to help me practice. We were taught the music, and even though I lost the ability to speak the language for many years, the one thing that brought me back was the music and the dance. I actually became a performer and a teacher for a while of Ethiopian dance, and so
look at you.
Yeah, it was great. I was traveling. It was a fun time. I loved it. And that was ultimately that was the last thread that when I went through those kind of high school rebellion years that kept me connected, and then ultimately brought me back to the culture. So I would say music and my family were the two things that kept me so invested. And then eventually I love history anyway, so I just like to learn about it, my own history if I can,
Yeah.
And as a side note, I'm curious to know what kind of music you listen to now.
Yeah. So I grew up, being from the Midwest, pretty much Common, Kanye, was big growing up, Cudi, being from Ohio. But I'm a big fan of just rap and R&B. My absolute favorite genre is 70s R&B, the golden era. I love it. I love that, just the style of the music, the singing. And I think it was I grew up in a household that appreciated, there's many male singers back home, male and women singers. And so I wasn't finding that in the early 2000s. There was Usher, and that was it. Usher, and then maybe Chris Brown just started coming.
They had Tank. They had what was his name? They got a list of
neo soul. The neo soul movement was popping for a while. D'Angelo, Maxwell.
Yeah, that's my favorite era.
Music Child. Okay, listen, hold on. I'm Quizlet. No, one. I'm yeah.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, do you knowing the culture and, still being in the States and things like that, do you feel like Ethiopia or America actually is starting to become more progressive with this conversation of, toxic masculinity, or removing that hold on men should do this and men should strictly do that? And if they don't do that, then they're not a man, or even with queerness, accepting more of that. Do you feel like it's starting to become more progressive in some sense in either the States or Ethiopia?
So I would say in Ethiopia, not right now. There hasn't been much movement to change the ideal Ethiopian man, essentially, and what that looks like. There's still a strong patriarchal society, the provider mentality, all of that is very strong there. In America, though, I would say yes. And I think the thing that's been the most interesting for me is that more men are trying to lead that conversation. It's always hard to get men into conversations about identity for a variety of reasons, mostly insecurity. And so it's been refreshing seeing so many men that are trying to figure this out and unpack it and understand it. Honestly, a lot of my healing was done through watching and learning and reading from other Black men, specifically queer men in particular, because in this country, at least, the only expression of
okay,
I'm saying for real, the only kind of space that I saw where I could even live a little bit outside of the masculine box that you're put into really young was when I watched my queer friends. So I'm oh, okay, it's kind of okay to embrace each other physically. It's kind of okay to just have fun and not be serious all the time. Especially in the 2000s, the early 2000s, when they had us in the big old shirts all the time and just being mad all the time.
Drowning in your clothes.
Listen, I was yo, this is not for me.
Triple XL, you wear a large? That shit was crazy.
Right. I used to be like, oh my God.
Like, that's a lot of fabrics, right? Like, what are we doing? But yeah, there's been a lot of change. I also think it's worrying though, because as there's been so much positive, like people like yourself, like people that I think one of my favorites, FD Signifier on YouTube. There's a lot of negative. You got the Kevin Samuels.
I was waiting on it.
The manosphere is real, and there's a racialized aspect to the manosphere that people aren't realizing. Like there's not surprised that most of the really big like personality figures in the manosphere have some type of like blackness associated with them, because we're seen as like the perfect man, like the masculine man. We're just seen as just the most masculine version of it. And I'm like, I'm gonna need brothers to wake up and be like, yo, don't pay attention to them. Like they're gonna drag you deeper into that hole. Like don't do it. You know, so
I'm glad you said that, because I've actually noticed that the more comfortable that men in like wider America get with like loosening the bounds of masculinity, of hypermasculinity, there is a pushback from a lot of demographics about that, like from even women. Like you'll see a lot of tweets and like a lot of posts about like he's zesty, a little spicy, like he's a little sassy. And like I'm starting to see an influx of those, and I'm starting to see that in conversations. So it was really interesting to see people go from like let's do away with hypermasculinity because it's clearly harming everyone to maybe not so much. Like
it's like, hold up, time out now. Like
they're like, no, wait a minute.
Dating has like, before getting in my relationship, like dating was so interesting as I was trying to go through that healing process, because there were so many. I never realized how many trigger like moments, I guess, there were in terms of my interactions with women in particular. I was just like, there were so many times where, I mean, I don't know, there's just assumptions being made, and there's just like, it's really difficult when you're trying to like grow and change, and then you're still having to interact with people that will, I mean, they'll just be like, yo, you're a man. You're like, that's it. Like, it's like, that's it. And I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, but like, okay, I don't know, maybe. Like, I'm trying to figure this out.
Sure, I guess. And you bringing up the conversation about like, first of all, thank you for like bringing attention to like being in queer spaces that has allowed you to feel comfortable in your space. I think that we need to realize that like queer men and straight men can exist in spaces and it not be anything of uncomfortability. Like the first thing you said to us is we look good. And you were able to say that as a proud, straight man and like have no second guessing of that. And I think that is like a rarity. And I think we need to push and like add that conversation of like, have that dialogue in a healthy space, because I think once we start to have that within each other, then we can start to really tackle those spaces where like, you're going into dating and, women are also projecting that like that man mindset or that man mentality, which is you're still a man, but you're comfortable in that identity of who you are and things of that nature.
You can define it.
You can define it, and also like where your culture comes from and like things like that. I think that it's more conversation is dialogue like this is needed so that we can have that space of like, understanding and that sense of like, you like, to me, I was like, when you just said like being comfortable with queer space, I was like, child, we always so comfortable here. Like, just to believe we got a creative spaces. Once we come out of this space, child, we like,
Wow,
but
that's real.
Yeah, but I think this is like a conversation that just is like on the cuffs and the tipping point. But I just wanted to thank you, Solo, for coming in to speak about your experiences in masculinity, growing up in, in Ethiopia, in the States, what you're navigating with yourself, and things like that. But before we like close out, what is like a takeaway that you want individuals that are listening, or just like one last like note you want to like leave listeners and viewers with before we start to do our like closing remarks?
Read more, listen more, respect people and their spaces in particular, and chill out, just like relax a little bit. Like it's not that deep. Like it is that deep, but it's like it's also like like sometimes when I think about how I was when I was growing up, and I was just so fixated on living up to a certain like ideal. I was like, bro, I wish I could go back and just be like, let me give you a hug, and then also take a breather. Like, take a breather. This ain't, you get to define, as you said, Derwin, you get to define you and do that. So
Yeah. Yes. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, Solo. And where can anybody else continue dialogue with you at? Like, you have so much like wisdom and like conversations that I know you want to like have with people, and I know this is why I thank you again because we have so many conversations. We meet only once a month, but we're at our table together. We're always talking about it and things like that. But for our listeners and viewers, where can they follow you at to continue these conversations if they would like to?
yeah, so pretty much I think all my social media handles, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow me at ATSE_solo. And ATSE it means Ase, it means emperor. So Derwin King, I see it like there's another.
Look, listen, we got Lord Devery, we got Derwin King, we got Ase. Come on, we just out here royalty. We is royalty. But you said that's on Instagram is on all your socials. What was it one more time?
ATSE_SOLO solo. Ase_solo.
Yes, thank you so much. And all can follow. Yes, I'm so sorry. You all can follow us on our Instagram and our social media if you would like to continue the conversation with me or Derwin. If you want to follow me or continue with me, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at @LordEvery. That is _LORDEVERY.
And you guys know you can find me on Instagram at Derwin King. That's DERWINKING. And on Twitter at Free Negro. That's FREENEGREAUX.
I know that's right.
You better free us. And if you all would like to continue the conversation on the podcast platform, you can hit us up on Instagram and Twitter at @ThatBlackBoyJoy. You can watch us on on YouTube at @ThatBlackBoyJoy. You can also write into us at thatblackboyjoypodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you all like, subscribe, comment, reach out, connect, all those good things. We are always going to be dropping episodes with you all. We want to connect. And just, always be so in love with who you are.
Love it.
I'm talking about that.